Hello, my name is Chase Crowell, and I'm here to do my project presentation on Henry Ford for AMS 430. Born in 1863, Henry Ford was the first surviving son of William and Mary Ford. They owned a pretty prosperous farm in Dearborn, Michigan. That was not far from Detroit, where Henry Ford will later spend a lot of his young years learning a lot of his mechanical experience. Um, that all started about the age of 12 when he was gifted a watch that he took apart and was able to actually put it back together, unlike most of his peers. And there for a while, he fixed watches, is what I read, for some of his family friends and family members. Around the age of 16, Henry Ford left home to Detroit. He was headed to be a machinist. He found apprentice work there. And then not long after, he returned back to the farm. So he got his first little taste there in Detroit of the machinist work. He was always interested in steam engines all throughout the farm. From what I read, he occasionally went back and forth between Detroit and the farm, it says there, for a little while until he met Clara Bryant, his beloved wife. She had grown up on a farm nearby, and at the beginning of their marriage, Ford ran a sawmill, but then not long after, his first real gig came about for what he was really liking. He was noticed by Edison Illuminating Company, where he was hired as an engineer. He was quickly rising throughout that Edison Illuminating Company. Within the first 2 years, Henry Ford had become the chief engineer, which is relatively amazing, if you ask me. Around that same time, he was having a child, another even more thing to implement into that. Now, another thing that I will say is he was on call for 24 hours a day for his job at Edison, and spent irregular hours throughout to develop all these different things he was doing while working there and having a son. But from what I read about Henry Ford, he never took vacations, never took breaks. He was a dedicated man. He was dedicated to discovering something and being something in this world. He has a lot of really good quotes that I'm going to read off for you here. So during all these things he's got going on, Ford began to develop his first gasoline-powered horseless carriage, or what we call today an automobile or car. He completed what we called the quadricycle. The quadricycle consisted of a light metal frame fitted with 4 bicycle wheels and powered by a 2-cylinder, 4-horsepower gasoline engine. Determined to prove upon his prototype, Ford sold the quadricycle in order to continue building other vehicles. He eventually began to receive some backing from several investors, and they began to form what was known as the Detroit Automobile Company. This would later become to be known as Cadillac, believe it or not. Ford stayed with this company for quite a few years. He was eager to put on a passenger car on the market. It didn't seem that the Cadillac's upper management and Ford's engineering ability, wanting to always need to improve and things to be perfect for Ford. He was a very hard-headed man, as we will begin to learn. So this just didn't work out too well for him, and he ended up departing with Cadillac Motor Car Company and established the Ford Motor Company, which became known as one of the greatest car producers today. I mean, it's an exceptional company, along with several others. They brought us many things, as well as he was able to bring us the assembly line. 2-cylinder, 8-horsepower Model A was actually his first production car ever assembled for Ford. Now, later on, Ford came out with his life's work, I would put in as the Model T. It was a great car They produced it for almost 20 years, and it became actually such a thing for Ford because it was known as the Tin Lizzie, and its success was so great that he quoted, I will make anybody a Model T, and as long as it's in the color black. He only wanted the car to be his one way. He didn't like anything to be changed. He liked for only his way to go. He was a very, very narrow-minded, hard-headed man, but he worked hard and he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. Now, some of the things Ford did with this and the Model T and how he was able to create such success was he was able to double the industry wage for his 8-hour day of workers from around $2.50 to $5 a day for the standard industry. That's something that's known with Henry Ford, the $5 day. Production went up so much, and the Tin Lizzie's demand remained very, very high. Over half of the cars in America were Model Ts, and the Model T did extremely well. And not long after its reign came the Model A. It was a relative disappointment. It was outsold by both Chevrolet and Plymouth. It was discontinued in 1931. I would say it was looked at somewhat as a failure, but it helped Ford move on in life. They then next introduced the V8 engine, which was a hit. As you know, in today's cars, half of the trucks, bigger style engines, all use a V8, and Ford basically introduced that. Now, the company was doing all right, number 3 in sales, it says, at this point in time. This is when Ford began to struggle with unorganizations of union labor, refusing to come to terms with the United Automobile Workers even after his competitors did so. In 1937, Ford security staff clashed with the UAW organizers in so-called Battle of the Overpass at the Roush plant, which was the National Labor Relations Board ordered Ford to stop interfering with the union organizations. Ford Motor Company signed its first contract with the UAW in 1941, but not before Henry Ford considered shutting down the company to avoid it. Now, Ford's political views were not the best, and he was later in life became a little bit interested in politics and different things like that. But his son died, who was the named president of the company earlier, and it ended up taking a really hard toll on his life. And not before long, he handed the company down to Henry Ford II in 1945, and he died 2 years later. But Henry Ford's impact was absolutely amazing throughout his lifetime. I mean, if you look at what we have today, he was a leader in the beginning. As far as cars, the transportation system he began to install with all his side works. Not only did he make cars, Henry Ford worked on gas stations, worked with transportation systems. He wanted to make it nice to drive his cars. He was just an incredible role model within the manufacturing world. The assembly line came from Ford, and he did an excellent job with that. Everywhere you look at in a manufacturing standpoint has some sort of an assembly line within it. It doesn't matter what manufacturing standpoint you look into. But his basic knowledge that he used in a manufacturing standpoint came to be what his Ford Motor Company is. He released an ultimate great thing. But that's about Henry Ford. Thank you for listening.